But one thing I'll add about that is, as I had been wanting to do these new agey kind of things for years. I'd wanted to go out of my body. I wanted to see my aura. As soon as he said that, something snapped within me, and I realized that's what I need to do. So I read the book, I began to meditate, and within a matter of a few months, I did those things. I saw my aura. I went out of my body, and I passed through them like little stages, and I realized, yeah, that wouldn't have changed my life, but now that I'm growing in my consciousness, I'm seeing those little phenomenal experiences for what they are. They're real, but they're not something I should be focused on. And I like to think of the metaphor of when somebody in karate is going to break a board. I've heard that they say, don't aim for the board, aim beyond it. And aim for the top in this lifetime. And then all the other stuff, Jesus said, will be added unto you. It wasn't until I began to meditate that I began to have some out-of-body experiences. So the first time you have a very vivid experience of being outside your body, it pretty much proves to you that, well, you're not the physical body. In my case, I'll go ahead and explain that experience. I was lying in bed at night when I lived in a studio apartment, and the sound of weird breathing came to me. It sounded like a gurgling sound. It was a weird sound, and I began to realize what I was hearing was like the sound of my breath from inside my lungs. It was a very weird sound. And then I began to be aware that actually I'm not attached to this body, and I willed myself to sit up, and I floated out of my body, and I stared ahead in the darkness, and I could see the closet that I meditated in, and the closet had these slats in it, and there was light glowing through the slats. I thought, that's curious. My closet, my meditation closet, is glowing. Then I said to myself, I know I'm awake, but I'm going to prove to myself I'm awake, or find out I'm not, when I float back down into my body. And because I'm always very aware, I think most of us are aware, when we transition from sleep to awake, we go, oh, it was just a dream. So I floated back down into my body and got into my body, and there was no transition. It was seamless. And then I sat up in my physical body and looked at my closet with my physical eyes, and it was just the same closet that I'd been looking at, only I couldn't see the glow. So it was very vivid that I could see a light, and I guess it's the charged atmosphere of the place where I meditated for many hours. I could see them with what I call the astral body. I could see them with that higher level of vision, but I couldn't see it with my physical eyes. So that was a very vivid experience, that all these teachings that I had read, that we have an energy body that we use, that inhabits the physical body, was proved very clear. I think that when this body dies, I haven't had that experience yet, but my understanding is that what's going to happen is that I will flow to that plane of expression that my consciousness is most drawn to. So the Buddha said, we're on the wheel of rebirth, and it's our desires that bring us back to this plane. So I think to the degree that we can purify our consciousness, refine our consciousness, so that we can be aware in higher dimensions, that's kind of an interesting way to put the idea of meditation. It's a process of refining our consciousness so we are aware of more subtle levels of being, and then we will have trained ourselves to be able to be active in a higher dimension than this one. But I'm happy to come back to this realm if I have service here. But I don't want to come back unaware of what I'm doing and start that whole search all over again. I want to leave this world completely awake to what I am, so that I don't have to start from scratch. That's a hard process, and you see it happening all around us. People who are starting from scratch, trying to awaken to what they are. It's not always fun.
So you have this experience, and it sounds like a series of experiences, and they're very convincing to you. It seems like, for sure.
Yeah, and you know, it's a very common experience. There are doctors and all sorts of people who have gone out of body and written books about it. Um, I met a man, the head of military sales for Volvo, the car company, when I used to work in New York City, and I went out and met with him, and I wasn't talking to him about spiritual things, but he just started opening up to me, and he explained how he had been in Vietnam, was injured, and was shot, and the whole helicopter ride back, he was outside the helicopter. And then he was put on the surgery table, and they covered his face, totally covered, and he watched the entire surgery from a point in the corner of the ceiling, looking down, and then afterwards told the surgeon all the things that he had seen them do, and the surgeon said, "You couldn't have done any of that unless you were perched, looking from that direction." But there are thousands of documented cases like that. But again, to me, we want to be careful not to get so caught up in the pursuit of that kind of phenomena, because what good is that if I come back and I'm arguing with my wife all the time and I'm not learning how to serve the world? So it's, to me, I want to keep coming back to the basics of being my highest self as much as I can in each situation. And I have to tell you that for most of my young life, I was an atheist. And I prided myself on the fact that I was so happily willing to accept that we live and we die and that's it. Because what I wanted was the truth. That's all I want. And that's all I want today. I want to know the truth. I don't have any interest in fooling myself to make myself feel better. But it was a series of incidents that led me to realize that my pride in my atheism was probably misplaced and that there was something beyond. I think that one of the fallacies of the intellectual mind, which I had that fallacy, was to think that we could figure things out with our intellect and that we could figure out the deepest levels of existence just by a thought process. Meanwhile, you have the greatest masters, the greatest teachers, the people who changed the world, like Jesus and Gandhi, who are of one mind that no, that we're not the body. There's a realm beyond the physical. And of course, that more and more, that's what the physicists, that's what they're saying, is that they're seeking that ultimate energy, that ultimate dimension from which all physicality emerges from. So to me, they are sort of on a spiritual search to find the ultimate truth, and we are too. And as I have followed this path and become aware that I'm not the body, I've seen my life unfold and blossom in so many ways that for myself, I am completely satisfied that materialistic thinking, that we are just a body, doesn't make a lot of sense, even intellectually. I think of the metaphor of a radio. When we hear a radio, or a caveman saw a radio, they would hear a symphony coming out, and they would assume that box is creating the symphony. So we look at the human body, and all the symphonies that have ever been created came from these human bodies. All the scientific theories, all the consciousness itself is pouring out of us, and we think this box is creating it because we can't find the electric plug. Same thing. So the box could never create the symphony, and ham and bologna sandwiches are never going to be the main ingredient that creates consciousness.